The Velthari had conquered 17 worlds before they found Earth. Their ships moved through space like shadows, dark and silent and deadly. Commander Zeth stood on the bridge of his flagship and looked at the small blue planet on the screen. It was beautiful, he thought. Blue oceans, green lands, white clouds. It would make a fine addition to the Empire. "Scan complete," said his second officer, Crix. "The dominant species calls themselves humans. They are primitive. Their technology is roughly 300 cycles behind our own. They have not even colonized their own moon properly." Zeth clicked his mandibles together in amusement. "Another easy conquest. How many of them are there?" "Approximately 8 billion. A good number for labor camps. What weapons do they possess?" Crix pulled up the data on his console. "Chemical projectiles, nuclear devices, some primitive directed energy weapons, nothing that can penetrate our shields." The commander nodded slowly. He had heard this report many times before on many worlds. The Velthari were masters of conquest. Their technology was superior. Their soldiers were stronger, faster, and better trained. In 300 years of expansion, they had never lost a war. "Send the standard message," Zeth ordered. "Give them one rotation of their planet to surrender. If they refuse, we begin the subjugation." The message was sent. It was simple and clear. Surrender or die. Most species chose to surrender. The ones who fought were quickly defeated. Zeth expected this world to be no different. But Zeth did not understand humans. On Earth, the message arrived at every communication device at once. Televisions, phones, computers, radios. Every language, every country. The alien face appeared on screens around the world, with its gray skin and large black eyes and clicking mandibles. "People of Earth," the message said, "we are the Velthari Empire. Your world now belongs to us. You will surrender all weapons and submit to our rule. Failure to comply will result in the destruction of your cities and the death of billions. You have 24 hours. The world went silent, then it went mad. In Washington, D.C., President Sarah Chen watched the message for the third time. Her advisors surrounded her, all of them speaking at once. Some said surrender was the only option. Some said they should fight. Some said it might be a hoax. "It's not a hoax," said General Marcus Webb. He was a tall man with gray hair and a face like carved stone. "Our satellites have confirmed it. There are 53 ships in orbit. They're real." "Can we fight them?" the president asked. "Honestly, I don't know. We've never fought aliens before. We don't know what they can do." "Then maybe we should surrender," said the Secretary of State. "Think of how many lives we could save." General Webb's eyes went hard. "And become slaves. I've seen what happens to conquered peoples throughout history. We'd lose everything that makes us human." President Chen stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the streets were chaos. People running, shouting, some praying. Fear was spreading like a disease, but she also saw something else. She saw people helping each other. She saw neighbors holding hands. She saw ordinary people standing their ground while the world fell apart around them. "We fight," she said quietly. "Madam President." "We fight," she repeated louder now. "We've been fighting since we crawled out of caves. We fought animals that were bigger than us. We fought whether that should have killed us. We fought diseases and disasters and each other, and we're still here." She turned to face her advisors. "If these aliens want Earth, they're going to have to earn it." The word went out. Every nation received the same message from the American president, and within hours, every leader on Earth had made the same choice. For the first time in human history, the entire planet was united in a single purpose. The 24 hours passed. The Velthari waited for the surrender message. It never came. Instead, every nuclear weapon on Earth launched at once. Commander Zeth watched the missiles rise from the planet's surface. Thousands of them, leaving trails of fire across the sky. He felt a moment of surprise. Most species did not resist so completely. "Destroy them," he ordered calmly. The Velthari defense systems activated. Energy beams swept through space, turning missiles into fireballs before they could reach the ships. Not a single weapon touched the fleet. Pathetic, Crix said. They wasted their most powerful weapons for nothing. Zeth nodded, but something bothered him. Something in the human's response felt wrong. He had conquered many worlds and he knew what desperation looked like. This was not desperation. This was something else. Begin the subjugation, he ordered. Land the first wave. Thousands of dropships fell from the sky. They targeted major cities on every continent. New York, London, Beijing, Moscow, Tokyo, Sydney. The Velthari soldiers inside were eager for conquest. They had done this many times before. The first dropship landed in Central Park. The doors opened, and 50 Velthari soldiers marched out. They were 8 feet tall, covered in natural armor and armed with plasma rifles that could melt steel. They expected terror. They expected running and screaming and quick surrender. What they got was a wall of fire. Every building around the park had become a fortress. Humans fired from windows, from rooftops, from behind cars and trees, and anything that would provide cover. The first Velthari soldiers fell before they even understood what was happening. Impossible, one of them said as he died. The humans' weapons were primitive, yes. Chemical projectiles could not penetrate Velthari armor, but there were so many of them. So many humans firing from every direction, and some of them had found the weak points, the joints in the armor, the gaps in the face shields, the soft places that even the Velthari had. In the first hour of the invasion, Earth killed more Velthari soldiers than had died in the previous century of conquest. Commander Zeth received the reports with growing confusion. Dropships destroyed before landing. Soldiers overwhelmed by sheer numbers, ambushes and traps, and human warriors who refused to retreat even when they were dying. "They're fighting back," Crix said, as if he couldn't believe it. "Of course they're fighting back. Every species fights back at first." "No, Commander, you don't understand." Crix pulled up footage from a battlefield. It showed a human soldier, wounded and bleeding, dragging himself toward a Velthari position with a bomb strapped to his chest. "They're not fighting to survive. They're fighting to win." Zeth watched the footage in silence. The human reached the Velthari position and detonated his bomb, killing himself and a dozen soldiers. Then the camera showed something that made Zeth's blood run cold. Another human picked up the first one's weapon and kept fighting. Then another. Then another. They weren't running, they weren't hiding, they were attacking. "What are these creatures?" Zeth whispered. He didn't know it yet, but he had just asked the most important question any alien would ever ask about humanity, and he was about to learn the answer the hard way. In the months that followed, the invasion continued. The Velthari had superior technology, superior weapons, superior everything. By all logic, they should have won quickly and easily, but war is not fought with logic alone. General Marcus Webb stood in the underground bunker that had become Earth's command center. Maps covered the walls, showing the current state of the war. Red zones were under alien control. Green zones were under human control. Yellow zones were contested. There was a lot of red, but there was more yellow than anyone had expected. "Report," the general said. "We've lost most major cities," said Colonel James Foster. "New York, London, Beijing, Tokyo, they're all occupied." "But not controlled," Webb said. "There's a difference." He was right. The Velthari might occupy the cities, but they didn't control them. Every night, explosions rocked alien positions. Every day, soldiers died in ambushes. The humans fought from sewers and subways and rooftops and basements. They fought with whatever they had. Guns, knives, bombs, fists. Some of them fought with nothing but anger and the determination to take at least one alien with them. "How are the guerrilla forces doing?" Webb asked. "Better than expected. Sarah Mitchell's group in Chicago has killed over 200 aliens this month." Webb nodded. Sarah Mitchell was a former school teacher. Before the invasion, she had never held a weapon in her life. Now she was one of the most feared resistance fighters on Earth. And the other continents. Africa is holding strong. The terrain is working in our favor. South America is giving them hell in the Amazon. Europe is coordinating strikes across multiple countries. Good, what about our new weapons? Colonel Foster smiled. It was not a nice smile. R&D has made a breakthrough. They've figured out how to reverse engineer some of the alien tech we captured. We'll have working plasma rifles within the month. Webb felt something he hadn't felt in a long time: hope. The Velthari had made a fundamental mistake. They had looked at human technology and seen weakness. They had looked at human society and seen division. They had looked at human history and seen chaos. What they had not seen was adaptation. Humans had been adapting for millions of years. They had survived ice ages and plagues and disasters that should have ended them. They had invented tools to compensate for their weakness. They had built cities to create strength in numbers. They had developed science to understand and overcome every obstacle. And when the aliens came, humans adapted again. The Velthari thought the war would last weeks. Then they thought it would last months. Now they were beginning to realize it might last years. And with every passing day, the humans got stronger. In the occupied city of New York, a young woman named Elena Rodriguez moved through the shadows. She was small and thin, with dark hair and dark eyes. Before the invasion, she had been a college student studying biology. Now she was a spy. She had learned the alien language. She had learned their weaknesses. She had learned their patrol routes and their schedules and their blind spots. And tonight, she was going to blow up their main supply depot. The bomb in her backpack was homemade. The explosives had come from a construction site. The timer had come from a kitchen store. It wasn't sophisticated, but it would work. She moved through the ruined streets, stepping over debris and bodies. The aliens had killed so many people in the first days: her parents, her brother, her friends, everyone she had loved. Now she had nothing left to lose, and that made her dangerous. The supply depot was guarded by 20 Velthari soldiers. They stood at attention, their plasma rifles ready. But they were looking outward, watching for attacks from the streets. They weren't looking up. Elena had climbed the building next door. She had spent 2 days in position, eating nothing, drinking almost nothing, waiting for the right moment. Now that moment had come. She threw the bomb. It sailed through the air in a perfect arc, landing in the center of the depot. The Velthari looked at it with confusion. They had never seen this type of weapon before. Then it exploded. The blast killed 12 aliens instantly. It destroyed enough supplies to cripple operations for a month, and it sent a message to the Velthari that nowhere was safe, not even their strongholds. Elena didn't wait to see the results. She was already running, disappearing into the underground tunnels that crisscrossed the city. The Velthari would search for her. They would never find her. She was human, and humans were very, very good at surviving. Commander Zeth stared at the reports and felt something he had never felt before: fear. The invasion was 6 months old. By now, every other world had surrendered. By now, the population should have been broken and compliant. By now, the Velthari should have been celebrating another easy victory. Instead, they were losing soldiers at an alarming rate. Their supply lines were constantly under attack. Their occupation forces were stretched thin, and the humans were getting stronger. "How is this possible?" Zeth demanded. "They are primitive. They should have been defeated in the first week." His advisors had no answers. They had studied the humans extensively. They had analyzed their technology, their society, their history, but they had missed something fundamental, something that could not be seen in data or scans or observations. They had missed the human spirit. Crick stepped forward. "Commander, I have completed my analysis. I believe I understand why we are failing. Speaker. We have conquered 17 worlds. Each time the pattern was the same. We demonstrate our superior power, the population despairs, and they surrender. But humans do not despair. The more we hurt them, the angrier they become. The more we push them, the harder they push back. He paused. We are not fighting a war, Commander. We are fighting a force of nature. Zeth was silent for a long moment. Then he spoke the words that no Velthari commander had ever spoken. Send a message to the High Council. Request reinforcements. This war is going to take longer than we planned. On Earth, the humans celebrated small victories and mourned their dead. They built new weapons from alien technology. They trained new soldiers from civilian populations. They adapted and evolved and refused to give up. And somewhere in the back of every human mind, a simple truth burned like fire. This was their world, and they would die before they gave it up. The next phase of the war was about to begin. 1 year had passed since the invasion began. The world was different now. Cities lay in ruins. Nations had fallen. Billions of people had died, but humanity still stood. In the mountains of Colorado, a new kind of army was being born. General Webb walked through the training facility, watching the young soldiers learn to fight. They were using captured alien weapons now, plasma rifles and energy shields and armor made from reverse-engineered Velthari technology. They moved with discipline and purpose. How many combats ready? Webb asked. 50,000 in this facility alone, Colonel Foster replied. Another 200,000 worldwide, and we're training more every day. Good, what about Project Phoenix? Foster hesitated. It's ready, sir, but are you sure about this? It's never been tested. We're out of options, Colonel. The Velthari reinforcements are coming. If we don't do something dramatic, we'll be fighting this war for another decade. He looked at the sky, where alien ships still orbited. It's time to take the fight to them. Project Phoenix was humanity's greatest secret. For the past year, while the Resistance fought on the surface, the brightest minds on Earth had been working on something incredible. They had built a fleet. Using captured alien technology and human ingenuity, they had constructed 20 starships in hidden facilities around the world. The ships were crude compared to Velthari designs. They were smaller, slower, and less armed, but they could fly. For the first time in history, humanity was about to wage war in space. The launch was scheduled for the next full moon. The ships would rise from hidden locations across the globe, hopefully before the Velthari could detect and destroy them. Then they would attack the orbital fleet. It was a suicide mission. Everyone knew it. The chances of success were slim. The chances of survival were even slimmer, but thousands of volunteers had stepped forward. Among them was a young pilot named David Chen. He was the president's nephew, though he never mentioned it. He had joined the resistance on the first day of the invasion and had been fighting ever since. Now he sat in the cockpit of a ship called the Spirit of Humanity, waiting for the signal. "You know this is crazy, right?" said his co-pilot, a woman named Maya Singh. "Of course it's crazy," David replied. "But so was standing up to these aliens in the first place. So was fighting them with bullets when they had plasma cannons. So was refusing to surrender when every logical analysis said we should." He smiled. "Humans are crazy. It's our best quality." Maya laughed. It was a good laugh full of life and defiance. "Fair enough. Let's go save the world." The signal came at midnight. 20 ships rose from the earth like angels of vengeance. They broke through the atmosphere and entered space, leaving trails of fire behind them. The Velthari detected them immediately. Alarms blared across the fleet. Commander Zeth rushed to the bridge, his mandibles clicking with shock. "How is this possible?" he demanded. "How do they have ships?" No one answered. There was no answer. The humans had done the impossible again. "Destroy them," Zeth ordered. The Velthari weapons fired. Energy beams lanced through space, targeting the human ships. But the humans had learned from a year of war. They had studied alien tactics, analyzed alien patterns, and found alien weaknesses. The ships scattered, using the planet's gravity to slingshot around at impossible angles. They were faster than the Velthari expected, more maneuverable, and they were armed with weapons that should not have existed. The spirit of humanity fired first. Its plasma cannons, built from captured Velthari technology, tore into an enemy destroyer. The alien ship's shields held for a moment, then collapsed. The destroyer exploded in a ball of blue fire. Across the battle, similar scenes played out. Human ships attacked with fury and precision. They died in huge numbers, but they took alien ships with them. And for every human ship destroyed, two more seemed to take its place. It was chaos, beautiful, terrible chaos. David Chen flew through the heart of the battle, dodging energy beams and debris. His ship was damaged, trailing smoke, but still flying. He had already destroyed 3 enemy vessels. He was looking for a 4th. Then he saw it, the flagship. Commander Zeth's personal ship, the pride of the Velthari fleet. It was the biggest, most powerful vessel in orbit, and it was his target. "Maya, can we reach it?" She checked the instruments. "We can reach it, but we won't survive it." David thought about his family. His parents, who had died in the first attack on Washington. His sister, who was fighting with the resistance in California. His aunt, the president, who had chosen to fight when everyone said surrender was the only option. "Do it," he said. The spirit of humanity turned toward the flagship. All around them, the battle raged. Human ships were falling, but so were alien ships. For the first time, the Velthari were losing in space. Commander Zeth saw the small ship approaching. He saw its weapons charging. He saw, in that moment, the truth that his people had failed to understand. Humans were not primitive. They were not weak. They were the most dangerous species in the galaxy, because they would not stop. They would never stop. They would fight until the last human was dead, and even then, their ghosts would haunt the Velthari forever. "Fire all weapons at that ship," Zeth screamed. But it was too late. The spirit of humanity unleashed everything it had. Plasma cannons, missiles, and finally, a weapon that no alien had ever seen. A bomb powered by captured Velthari energy cells, designed to overload and create a chain reaction. The flagship's shields flickered and failed. The bomb struck the hull and detonated. For a moment there was light, pure, beautiful, terrible light. Then the flagship was gone. Commander Zeth was gone. And the tide of the war had turned forever. The death of Commander Zeth changed everything. For the Velthari, it was unthinkable. Their greatest commander, killed by primitive creatures who should have been conquered in days. The news spread through the fleet like a disease. For the first time in their history, the Velthari felt doubt. But for humanity, it was a spark of hope. David Chen had survived somehow. His ship was destroyed, but an escape pod had carried him and Maya back to Earth. They landed in the Pacific Ocean and were picked up by a resistance boat. When the news spread that the alien flagship had been destroyed, people wept with joy. In underground bunkers and hidden camps and occupied cities, humans celebrated. They had proven something that no one could deny. They could win. President Sarah Chen gave a speech that was broadcast around the world. "Today, we showed the universe what humans are made of," she said. "We are not slaves. We are not victims. We are warriors. We are survivors. And we will never, ever give up." The speech reached every occupied city, every resistance cell, every human still alive on Earth. And it lit a fire that would never go out. The war entered a new phase. The Velthari reinforcements arrived, but they arrived into a different situation than they expected. The orbital fleet was in chaos. The ground forces were under constant attack, and the humans were building more ships. General Webb had planned for this moment. The first wave of human ships had been a sacrifice, designed to damage the alien fleet and give humanity time to build more. Now that time was paying off. New ships rose from hidden facilities, bigger ships, better ships, ships designed with all the lessons learned from the first battle. The second human fleet was not a suicide mission, it was an army. In the occupied cities, resistance forces coordinated massive uprisings. They timed their attacks to match the space battle, creating chaos on two fronts. The Velthari couldn't respond to everything at once. For the first time, they were being pushed back. Sarah Mitchell, the former school teacher, led the uprising in Chicago. She had started with 12 people hiding in a basement. Now she commanded thousands. They swept through the city like a tide, overwhelming alien positions and liberating prisoners. "Keep moving," she shouted, her voice hoarse from battle. "Don't give them time to regroup." Her fighters obeyed. They were a mix of soldiers and civilians, young and old, men and women. They were armed with everything from plasma rifles to baseball bats, and they were unstoppable. By morning, Chicago was free. Similar scenes played out across the world. New York fell to the resistance after a brutal 3-day battle. London was liberated by a coalition of European forces. Beijing was taken back by the Chinese military, which had been hiding in the mountains for months. The Velthari tried to maintain their grip, but it was slipping. Every day they lost more ground. Every day more soldiers died. Every day the humans grew stronger. In orbit, the second battle was even more decisive than the first. The human fleet attacked with tactics that the Velthari had never seen. They used asteroids as cover. They coordinated strikes with ground-based weapons. They sacrificed ships to protect others. And they won. The new Velthari commander, a female officer named Thessara, watched her fleet crumble. She had been told that humans were easy to conquer. She had been told that this would be a simple cleanup mission. Instead, she was watching her ships burn. "How?" she asked, echoing the question that Zeth had asked before he died. "How are they doing this?" Her advisor, an old Velthari who had studied many species, answered slowly. "We underestimated them, Commander. We looked at their technology and saw primitives. We looked at their divisions and saw weakness. But we missed the truth." "What truth?" "Humans are not defined by their technology or their divisions. They are defined by their spirit, their will to survive, their refusal to accept defeat." He paused. "We have faced many species, Commander, but we have never faced anything like this." Thessara made a decision that no Velthari had ever made before. She ordered a retreat. The alien ships pulled back from Earth's orbit. They gathered at the edge of the solar system, licking their wounds and trying to understand what had gone wrong. On Earth, people looked up at the sky and saw freedom. The war was not over. The Velthari were still out there, still dangerous, still possessing technology far superior to humanity's. But something had changed. The impossible had become possible. The inevitable had been avoided. Humanity had faced extinction and refused to die. President Chen addressed the world again, this time from the ruins of Washington, D.C. The city was being rebuilt, one brick at a time. "We have won a great victory," she said. "But the war is not over. The aliens will return. They will come back with more ships and more soldiers, and when they do, we will be ready." She paused, looking at the camera with eyes that had seen too much death. "But today, we celebrate. Today, we remember those who gave their lives so that we could live. Today, we honor their sacrifice by promising to never give up, never surrender, never forget what we are capable of." Around the world, people cheered. They cried. They held each other. They had survived the darkest moment in human history, and they had emerged stronger. In Colorado, General Webb shook hands with David Chen. "You did good, son. Your parents would be proud." David nodded, thinking of all the friends he had lost. "What happens now, sir?" "Now we prepare. We build more ships, we train more soldiers, we turn this entire planet into a fortress." Webb looked at the sky. "And when they come back, we'll be ready to take the fight to their homeworld." It was a bold statement. A year ago it would have been impossible. Now it seemed almost inevitable. Elena Rodriguez stood in the streets of New York watching the sunrise. The city was in ruins, but it was alive. People were returning, rebuilding, reclaiming their home. She thought of her parents, her brother, everyone she had lost. "We did it," she whispered. "We actually did it." She didn't know what the future would bring. No one did. But for the first time since the invasion began, she felt something besides anger and grief. She felt hope. And hope, she was learning, was the most dangerous weapon in the universe. 5 years after the invasion began, humanity reached the stars. It had taken every resource, every mind, every ounce of determination, but they had done it. They had built a fleet capable of interstellar travel. They had trained an army of soldiers who knew how to fight aliens. They had unified a planet that had once been divided by nations and borders and petty conflicts. And now they were going to war. General Marcus Webb, now Fleet Admiral Webb, stood on the bridge of the HSS Victory, humanity's first true battleship. It was massive, bristling with weapons that combined human ingenuity and Velthari technology. Around it, 200 other ships waited for the command to move. "Admiral," said Captain David Chen, now his second in command, "all ships report ready. We can jump at your order." Webb nodded slowly. He thought about all the battles he had fought, all the people he had lost, all the sacrifices that had brought them to this moment. "Send a message to Earth," he said. "Tell them we're going home." He didn't mean Earth. He meant the place that humans had always been destined to reach, the stars. The fleet jumped. Interstellar travel was strange. One moment they were in their home system. The next they were light years away, emerging from a tier in space near the Velthari border. Around them, alien sensors screamed with alarm. The Velthari had rebuilt their forces in the 5 years since the retreat. They had new ships, new weapons, new commanders. They had prepared for the day when humanity would come for them. But they still didn't understand what they were facing. The human fleet attacked without warning. They had learned from 5 years of war. They knew Velthari tactics, Velthari weaknesses, Velthari psychology. They struck with precision and fury, destroying outposts and stations before the enemy could respond. The Velthari tried to fight back. They sent their fastest ships to intercept. They launched waves of fighters. They used every weapon in their arsenal. It wasn't enough. The humans had something the Velthari didn't. They had motivation. Every human in that fleet remembered the invasion. They remembered the cities that burned, the families that died, the moment when extinction had seemed certain. And they were never going to let it happen again. Admiral Webb led the assault on the first Velthari colony world. It was a planet called Kethris, home to 5 billion aliens. It had factories that built warships. It had training facilities that created soldiers. It was a legitimate military target. But Webb was not a monster. He was not going to do to the Velthari what they had done to Earth. "Open a channel to the planet," he ordered. His communications officer complied. Webb's face appeared on every screen on Kethris, just as the Velthari commander's face had appeared on every screen on Earth 5 years ago. "People of Kethris," Webb said, "your government attacked our world. They killed billions of our people. They tried to enslave our species." He paused. "We are not here for revenge. We are here for justice." He let that sink in. "Surrender your military forces. Allow us to destroy your war factories. Do this, and we will leave your civilian population in peace. Refuse, and we will do what we must to protect our world." It was a choice, something the Velthari had never offered Earth. The response came within an hour. The military forces surrendered. The war factories opened their doors. For the first time in Velthari history, a colony had submitted to a foreign power. The pattern repeated across the border. Some worlds fought. They were defeated, though Webb always kept civilian casualties to a minimum. Most worlds surrendered when they saw what had happened to those who resisted. Humanity was not cruel, but humanity was strong. Within a year, human forces had pushed deep into Velthari space. They had liberated 17 species that the Velthari had conquered before Earth. They had built alliances with races that had thought themselves alone in the universe. And they were approaching the Velthari homeworld. Commander Thessara, now Grand Admiral Thessara, watched the reports with grim acceptance. She had survived the disaster at Earth. She had rebuilt the fleet. She had done everything in her power to stop the human advance. It hadn't been enough. "They're coming," said her advisor, the same old Velthari who had warned her years ago. "They'll be here within a week." Thessara nodded. "Then we have a week to prepare." "Prepare for what? We cannot defeat them. We could barely hold them at Earth when they had nothing. Now they have a fleet that rivals our own. Now they have allies across the galaxy." "Then we negotiate." The advisor was stunned. Negotiate? The council would never agree. "The council doesn't have a choice," Thessara said sharply. "We started this war because we thought humans were weak. We were wrong. Now we must face the consequences." She rose from her seat and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, a human fleet was coming to demand justice for the billions who had died, coming to ensure that nothing like the invasion would ever happen again. Thessara had studied humans extensively since the war began. She had learned their history, their culture, their values. She had come to understand something that her predecessor had never grasped. Humans were not just survivors. They were builders. They took the worst moments in their history and used them to create something better. They turned tragedy into strength, suffering into wisdom. If the Velthari could find a way to make peace, they might survive. They might even benefit from human energy and innovation. But if they continued to fight, they would be destroyed. The choice was clear. When the human fleet arrived at the Velthari homeworld, they found no battle waiting. Instead, they found a delegation. Grand Admiral Thessara stood at its head, her soldiers unarmed, her ships powered down. "We wish to discuss terms," she said. Admiral Webb was surprised. He had expected a final, desperate battle. Instead, he got something he had never imagined. A surrender. The negotiations took months. Humans demanded guarantees. They demanded reparations for the deaths of billions. They demanded access to Velthari technology and a seat at the table of galactic affairs. The Velthari agreed to everything. But humans also offered something in return. They offered trade. They offered alliance. They offered the chance to build something new together. It was not forgiveness. The dead could not be brought back. The pain could not be erased, but it was a beginning. President Sarah Chen signed the treaty on behalf of Earth. She was older now, her hair gray, her face lined with years of war. But her eyes still burned with the same fire that had made her refuse to surrender on that first terrible day. "This treaty does not end our grief," she said. "It does not undo the horror of the invasion, but it opens a door to a future where our species no longer fight to survive, but work together to thrive." She looked at Thessara, who stood across from her. "We could have destroyed you. We chose not to. Remember that. Remember what mercy looks like, and teach your children never to make the same mistake your empire made." Thessara bowed her head. "We will remember." The treaty was signed. The war was officially over. On Earth, people celebrated for days. They had won. They had actually won. They had gone from being a primitive species facing extinction to being one of the most powerful forces in the galaxy. But more than that, they had proven something to the universe, something that would echo through history for millennia. Humans were not to be underestimated. General Webb, now retired, sat on his porch in Colorado and watched the sunset. The sky was clear for the first time in years. No alien ships, no smoke from burning cities, just peace. His granddaughter ran up to him, a little girl with bright eyes and endless energy. "Grandpa, tell me about the war again." He smiled. "Again, I've told you that story 100 times." "I know, but I like the ending." Webb pulled her onto his lap. "All right. Once upon a time, aliens came to Earth. They thought we were weak. They thought they could conquer us easily, but they were wrong, because humans are the stubbornest species in the universe. We don't know how to give up. We don't know how to surrender. All we know how to do is fight." "And we won," the girl said, finishing the story. "Yes," Webb said, looking at the stars. "We won." Far above, a human starship passed overhead, heading out to explore the galaxy. It was the beginning of a new era, an era where humanity would take its place among the stars. The Velthari had come to conquer. They had failed because they underestimated one simple thing: human resolve. It was the most powerful force in the universe, and it always would be.